people, and we will go ahead and get started. Shannon sent out the agenda, and here it is. So I'm going to let her take over and go through the agenda.
Morning again, everyone. So your recommendations are presented to City Council on Monday for a discussion item, and I will take them back to City Council for their August 2nd meeting to be ratified. So that's where your recommendations stand. Any questions on that? Okay, the next thing we talked last week, I was hoping we'd have some more of our community folks here today because they were not at last week's meeting. Really what I wanted to get into this week was we had talked about moving into more project-based groups. We had talked about 3 projects and seeing if there was anyone else from the land use and development group that wanted to be included on these 3 kind of project groups. So we talked last week about looking into conducting an impact fee study, and that would be mostly staff. We talked about exploring or updating the PD regulations, and we kind of included a lot of your recommendations into that, looking at offering developer incentives, updating BAR's role in PD approval, and also looking at traffic and housing, kind of their recommendations that might fall into this too. And last week, Bob, David, and Chris said y'all wanted to be included in that along with some staff. And I'm gonna ask some folks from the traffic group and the housing group to join with you guys. Is there anybody else that wants to be involved in that? All right.
I thought Tom had volunteered.
Did you say Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm in.
Okay.
Okay.
I was on mute,
That was
I think.
that may have been a example of you being voluntold with
That's okay.
undue peer pressure there. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
okay.
he
I'm
expressed interest in that one because of his perspective he can
I'm
bring to
flattered.
Yeah.
I am flattered. Thank you.
And while I have all of you at the same time in the same place, could we make that an in-person meeting and maybe make it a little bit longer, maybe an hour and a half, and really get to the core of what you want to change or update so that then we can send that to the Planning Commission to move that along a little bit faster instead of doing this by Zoom? Would you all be willing to do that?
I'm fine with that.
Sure.
Shannon, this is Larry. I didn't quite get the third. It's the third group, the transportation and housing. 1, impact fees, 2, PD regulations, and 3.
The third project that I have listed here is some of you guys expressed an interest in really looking at the city ordinances and regulations as a whole.
Right.
I was not going to tackle that one yet. That's I thought we'd start with the PD regulations.
All right. I'd like to work on the PD regulations.
Okay, Larry.
And I would as well, Shannon.
Okay. I think that would be very helpful. Are you guys all willing to meet in person, and we'll try and move that along a little bit faster?
The key is timing. So
Right.
I like in person very much.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's with once the semester gets started, timing is going to be very restricted for me. So
Do you guys want to just meet next week at this time?
August is a bad month. I mean,
Okay.
I'm going
Could
to be
we-
out of town most of August.
and I'll
Could
be
we-
out of town part of August.
Okay.
So,
And
And I'm
starting
out of town
classes.
next Wednesday. Yeah.
so maybe have in person, but access to remote.
Yeah.
We can do that. Could we start this next Wednesday? If we're not going to meet for this group next Wednesday, could we meet in person next Wednesday about PDs?
Well, again, timing. I mean, evenings are better for me, but
Okay.
for longer in-person meetings. So I don't know what I'm trying to look at what my calendar is for next week.
All right.
I'm good next week for the PD
I
Wednesday.
am too.
I mean,
I
I
am
guess
as well.
the question is, in my mind, is do we still have these larger group meetings, you know, virtual at this time? I mean, I guess my fear is fragmentation, that a lot of people are working on stuff and they might not be working in coordination with each other, but that's my concern. But so, I mean, maybe these meetings can be short and just updates, but yeah, I think it'd be helpful to have the various groups interacting.
Yeah, do a quick check-in. Now, I think with these 3 projects, they are, you know, interrelated, and but there is definitely some work that can be done independently. I like the idea of a periodic check-in amongst the larger group, just to make sure that we're going down the same road there.
I mean, maybe this meeting is a once a month meeting or bi-weekly meeting,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
because you're going to have to give these various task forces time to actually get some things accomplished.
Yeah. Yep.
So the implementation committee is moving to meeting once a month, the first Wednesday of the month. Do you guys, we can just keep the land use meeting at that same time, 8:30 a.m. the first Wednesday of each month?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm good with this group. I won't be able to attend next Wednesday at all, but go ahead since everybody else is open, and y'all can keep me updated.
All right. So I had that Tom, Larry, and Elaine, you guys could make it. I guess we were talking about next Wednesday morning. David and Chris, would you be able to make it then? Or do we need to look at a different time?
No, that
Is
was,
this going to be an in-person meeting then next Wednesday? Is that
It
what
would
we're
be
talking
an
about?
in-person meeting, yes.
And
At
where would that
8:30?
be?
At 8:30? What
At
time?
8:30, and we do it at City Hall in one of the, probably the upper conference room, nice big conference room.
All right.
Okay.
That's the 28th, right?
Tom, were you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm good.
Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. And I'll send some stuff out for you to look at. I'll kind of cut out our current PD regulations and send those out so everybody can see what we're currently starting from before we meet next week. So any other input or ideas on those your other projects? Larry asked about number 3, exploring the idea of revising all of the Sydney ordinances. Are you guys okay waiting on that and doing the PD one first? Or do you want to set up a group that's looking at that simultaneously?
This is Larry, I'm okay with waiting, but I do have another question. When are we going to have a very serious discussion of what constitutes these catalyst overlay areas? You know, the dialogue that needs to go on with what they are and what kind of regulations and ordinances we may have to change to accomplish that is pretty extensive. And I think the sooner we start having that dialogue, the better.
I think yeah, it's two, you know, again, two different schools of thoughts here. Part of me thinks that the redevelopment workshop will help us think through a lot of that information that might apply to others as well. But that's also going to take a little while. So maybe we go back and we think about the ones where we had a higher level of agreement about what the vision for those might be. We could put some thought, we could get a group to put some thought into that.
Yeah, Bob, I see the up-down, the redevelopment process being quite different from the other 4. And I'm not sure we're going to get the information we need for the other 4 through that redevelopment process. You may be right. I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't
right
think we're going to
now,
get exactly what we need, but I think we're going to get a framework. The idea is that we get a framework for how we do development. And I don't think we should have like a completely different, like, basic framework that we look at for how the development process occurs.
Right.
For
No, I
9 different
understand that.
processes. So that's what I'm thinking about, is that framework idea of how we approach and do development in the city of Clemson, and applying that across. There's going to be things about that are obviously going to apply across catalyst areas. So that's what I was thinking about.
Okay, all right. I worry that, that one of the biggest elements with this whole white paper, whatever we're going to call this thing now, are these catalyst areas.
Yeah.
And really defining those. And we've got 5, that we have to define, and they aren't all going to be the same, as we know, but the process you're talking about, I agree. We should be using a similar process. I'm a little anxious about delaying that dialogue. Maybe we could have them going on simultaneously. I don't know. I don't want us delaying that dialogue any longer than we absolutely have to.
Yeah. And this is 100% my opinion. I would think that if we were going to take a look at some other catalyst areas, the others that are closest to campus,
Right.
that might be very different in how we think about them, along 93 down towards Esso, and then the one up by, what do you call it, the foundation and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So yeah, if we, maybe think about those 2, I think we had less agreement on what 93 might be. And it seemed to me that we had a little more agreement on the one that's, foundation, Daniel Square, University Ridge, Foy Creek, there. So maybe those are 2 that we could put some thought into on the front end as we move, as we continue to move forward with the redevelopment process and these other items.
Ken?
Yes, thanks. With item 3, explore revision of city ordinances and regulations. Are we speaking of zoning in that?
Yeah.
Zoning and land use. Yes.
Zoning and land use. So yeah, in terms of zoning, I'm interested in part of that discussion, including discussion of inclusionary zoning. So I'd be interested in participating in that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when we get there on that, I'm interested in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So for the catalyst areas, how do you guys want to move forward? Or do you want to wait on that until we've looked at the PD regulations? What would you all like to do?
Shannon, let's you and I put a little bit of thought into what that might look like on thinking about the catalyst areas, and so, come up with a plan to move forward and float that out to everybody.
Sounds good.
Everybody else okay with that?
Yeah, that's good, Bob.
Okay.
Just so we are thinking about it,
Yeah.
And how we move it forward as rapidly as possible.
Yeah.
Are there other items that we've covered under the land use recommendations or in all our discussions that you guys also want us to be thinking about how we move forward on? Besides the ones that are listed here.
The development standards, and I'm assuming that's part of 3, but this whole idea of exemptions for sidewalks and stuff like that needs to be addressed and how exemptions are handled.
Fran?
So Shannon, you may have said you're already doing this and I missed it, but I think another crucial piece of this is lining all this up with the comp plan also, because that's another document that has a lot of weight. So if we're changing things in the zoning ordinances or the PD, that's great. But if that ends up in conflict or not supportive of the comp plan, then we're going to be in a position we've been at before where we have conflicting ideas and different documents that are supposed to be helping guide us. And Todd may already be doing this, but, and I think you said you are, but someone has to really be looking at whatever these changes are and how does that jive with what the comp plan is saying? Does it make it easier to meet the comp plan? Does it make it difficult? Does it make it impossible? And we can revise the comp plan at any time. We have the authority to do that, I think. But those things have to go on because we've heard at meetings, the city council, where people have said, well, on page 37 of the comp plan, it says this. So you can't be doing that. So those things I think have to go, well, maybe sequentially, maybe in parallel, but they have to both occur. Otherwise, we're going to get in that same position of conflicts that we've created by our own policies and documents.
So-
Andy, where are we on that process of taking a look at the comp plan and ClemsonNext and putting that, melding those two things together and getting it into a more concise, easy to digest format?
I'll need
And
to
Bob,
check
not
with Todd to see where the consultant is on that. I think they ought to be getting done with cleaning it up and getting everything linked up correctly and doing the edit portion of it.
Yeah, that's correct, Andy. We've got, I think, 7 of the 10 chapters completed or they're in the hands of the Planning Commission. We probably will have the rest of them done in the next couple of weeks. But to be clear, all that is doing is cleaning up the ordinance, the comp plan that was deferred to council, a year and a half ago. So this is pagination, removing redundancies, typographical errors. This was not in any way an edit related to content or in association with ClemsonNext. What is on the website is and to answer your question, Bob, the answer is that until this group makes a decision on something, because right now there's been a lot of good conversation, but to my knowledge, nothing has been committed to at all. And so until something is decided, that's when we'll begin to start looking at, how does this G-Haul with the comp plan? But what is available on the website is I took the 33 strategies that ClemsonNext, the white paper, espoused, and for each one of those, I identified where they were or were not in conflict with the comprehensive plan. Okay. So we have that. And as y'all lock in on something or add something wasn't part of one of those original strategies, then we can start taking a look at how they line up.
Can I share my screen for a minute? I want to show you guys something that I think would be helpful, because frankly, every activity that is undergone should telegraph back to the comp plan. And this is what we do as a regular basis, right? So, what's the vision? The evidence-based goals should be, and this is for another project, it's completely different, but this should be the goals of the comp plan, the major directives of the comp plan. And then every initiative that we undertake should be tracked back to those objectives and goals, right? So we need to be tracking this all the way through. And this is what we would do if we were doing the project. We would do this kind of relationship, so that you're not just wandering off into the woods on whatever initiative you're talking about. You're actually guided by the the goals and the comprehensive plan and the vision for what we're trying to accomplish.
Thanks for
Make
sharing that,
sense?
David. Yeah. Why don't you keep that up on the screen if you don't? Well,
Okay.
if so, people.
All right,
take
I
a
can do it.
look.
I can do it again.
Fran has patiently had his hand up again.
So just a couple things. First, yeah, just to reinforce what Todd said, the review going on of the comp plan now is, my understanding, is primarily editorial. It's really not content. And so I think we need to be aware of that. I think the other thing is, when my comment earlier was more related to the groups meeting now to look at the PD and change ordinances, that I think those things have to be happening together. But at some point, someone who knows the comp plan well enough to say, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't follow, or this doesn't meet our comp plan. We heard that Monday at the meeting where someone said, well, according to your comp plan, this area is marked for development, and what you're doing now is reducing the opportunity for development, or some such thing. I forget what it was, but that happens a lot. So I just think it's time to make sure those are parallel documents, parallel philosophy. I like what David just put up here, but we run the risk, if we're not doing that, of having roadblocks from people who know the comp plan better than I do, saying, well, you can't do that because the comp plan says the opposite. So they have to be supportive and build towards the same end. They may do that now, but I wouldn't rely on the current review, because that is primarily editorial and organizational, not content, as far as I know.
Well, and Fran, one of the things just for y'all to be aware of, I mean, my department we're constantly on looking at this, and we're waiting for decisions to be made by the leadership to say, this is what we want to do. Right now, there are a lot of good ideas out there, but as things begin to gel, that's when we will, on a daily basis, be able to tell you guys, if you're interested, whether or not what you're talking about and proposing lines up with the comp plan, where we might need to add new language or delete language. But we're going to be constantly looking at that. The way I envisioned it is probably several waves of this, that we won't be doing this on a daily basis, that as different committees or different decisions are made, or catalyst areas defined, that as those occur, we'll be kind of drafting and noting where the comp plan realignment would need to occur, and then present that to the Planning Commission and Council in waves, instead of otherwise we'll be doing this every meeting. And so what we think is more efficient and practical, and probably the best use of everybody's resources, is to do these in waves. But at any point along the way, to the degree that the staff is involved in the process, that we will be able to provide this group or any group with an opinion as to where the intended actions of any committee is aligned or in conflict with the comp plan. And we can do that today. We can do that every day. So just we're kind of the watchdogs on that. And then you all can take that information and disagree with it and polish it or whatever you want to do with it, but we'll be providing that. Now, you may want somebody else to do it as well, and that's fine, but just to let you know that we are doing that.
Those of you who
Elaine
are
had her
around.
hand up. Elaine?
Yeah, Andy's reading my mind, because he just put something in the chat box about the 10-year comp plan overhaul. That was what I was going to raise the question, since that's a huge undertaking and it could fit in really well with the things that we're talking about changing or matching up. That seems to me like we would want to start that process kind of in tandem with what we're talking about with ClemsonNext. And I just like, as we think about that we think broader than 10 years, that maybe we work toward our next comp plan would be 20 or 30 years out, which I've seen in other South Carolina municipalities. They don't have necessarily just limit themselves to 10 years. And I think with what we're doing, we want to think a little bit broader than that and make some longer term goals or visions.
All right,
Absolutely.
David?
I just shared this as another version of something similar a kind of matrix reference that we did for the College Avenue study when we did it. So, that's how we should be organizing, that every action we're taking tracks back to the strategic plan and the comp plan. So
It looks
But
like
it's-
you designed a suspension bridge for College Avenue.
yeah, that's
Hey,
a complex one, and it will get complex, but this is a simpler version, but
Can you put those in the Google Drive in the land use folder, or send them
yeah,
to
I thought
Shannon so she can do that?
didn't I put the whole Clemson study in there? I
Did
may
you
have.
already? It's
I-
already in there. Okay.
I thought I did, but I'll go back and look.
All right.
But there was a lot of work done back then. So okay.
Yeah. So I'm in agreement with Andy and Elaine that I think we ought to consider getting a head start or a jump start on the 10-year update to the comprehensive plan. I thought the consultants not necessarily were changing the content, but were also going to help us think through a couple of formats, where you have the super quick, easy to understand version, the 10 to 12 page kind of version that gives you a little more detail, and then the full version of the comp plan. So anyway, but it doesn't look like we've gotten to that point yet with a consultant, but it would make sense if we were going to get a little bit of a jump start on the comp plan, probably this time, to get to engage someone to help us with that process this time. So anyway, any other comments or concerns about anything on the current agenda? All right. Shannon and I will get together and put some thought into how we move forward with catalyst areas and get that to you. The smaller group that's going to begin looking at PDs is going to meet next week, but everybody else will have a week off, and we'll begin to transition to, and we'll think about that a little bit too going forward as these groups go, but meeting probably once a month, maybe twice a month, depending on, again, where we are in the cycle and process of work that we're going to do.
Couple housekeeping things. Question. So how many people showed up at the last session yesterday? You're muted,
You're
Shannon.
muted. Yeah.
All right. At the last session, we had 9.
How many were people other than those
Those
involved
were
in this
9
process?
not involved in Clemson Next.
Okay.
So we
Well-
had 16 overall, 17 overall yesterday that were not already engaged in Clemson Next.
Okay. So, my suggestion is, in my experience, is these meetings are best done in the evenings. And that one probably had the greatest attendance because the timing of it was at the end of the workday. And, do it in different locations on different evenings of the week. But, I just think, the participation we had in our session, and then the participation from what I hear in the morning session, was pretty low. Of course, that had rain, but the evenings, working people just don't have the ability to come and engage during the day. So that's one thing. The next thing is we're going to this new meeting schedule. The only access to this Zoom I have is the 8 o'clock meeting invite that keeps on showing up for me. So can we just send out a new invite with whatever the new meeting schedule is for these Zoom meetings when we do them? So, and because, it's the only, so that we can go forward with the new schedule and Zoom. And I think, to be honest with you, these meetings ought to be hybrid, because some people will be able to join in person and some people won't. And so that would be my
we
suggestion.
can definitely do that. The reason that we've kept the single Zoom link, David, is so that we don't all have to the 8 o'clock group that's almost all involved in this meeting don't have to log out and end this meeting and then hop on a new meeting. So we can just pause and go forward. So that's the reasoning by keeping the one single Zoom link for the 8 and the 8:30 group that are meeting back to back. Because a bunch of people from the 8 o'clock meeting are on this meeting. So, but we can fix that as we go forward and things change a little bit. I'm all for trying the hybrid approach. I do know when we were in ClemsonNext in the beginning, we did a hybrid meeting one morning, and sometimes it was a little tough, but we can be really intentional about that for the people that were online and the people that were in the room. It was basically two different meetings. Hybrid meetings are tough across the board. But we can work on making sure that that doesn't happen. And as long as we don't have the blow up in COVID that people are worried about now, hopefully most people could be there in person as well often. So, but yeah, we can look at all those things, and Shannon and I'll work on that as well.
Okay, because right now, is the 8 o'clock group meeting weekly still? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, we've been meeting basically every time this group is meeting, where we've met as well.
Because it shows up on my calendar, and so
yeah.
and so it'd be nice to have the group that's specific to this have the invites for their meeting. But okay.
All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you all. We'll be in touch. No meeting next week unless you are one of the people working on the PD process. And so Shannon will be in touch with that group about that meeting, and we'll go from there.
Thanks.
Everybody have a good
Saw
day.
the Shannon hang for about